Tani Adewumi is an 8-year-old prodigy who's already defeated many talented players within the world of chess. While his brilliance at a young age is undeniable, all of it would be tested against Hikaru Nakamura, a 5-time US chess world champion. Tani, using the white pieces, opens with pawn e4. Hikaru responds with the move pawn c5. This series of moves is known as the Sicilian defense. Tani jumps his knight over to c3 while Hikaru advances his pawn to d6. Tani moves his other knight to f3. Hikaru mirrors this with the move knight f6. Tani advances his d2 pawn to d4. Hikaru takes that pawn, and Tani captures right back with his knight. Black pawn moves to g6, and white pawn goes to h3. The black bishop moves to g7, which leads to the white bishop shifting to e3. Hikaru moves his knight to c6. Tani makes the careful move of bishop c4. This allows Hikaru to castle, which Tani responds to by moving his bishop to b3. The black knight jumps to a5. This causes the white queen to advance forward. Hikaru's bishop moves to d7. Tani slides his own bishop all the way to h6. Hikaru advances his b7 pawn to b5. In response, the white pawn moves to f3. This defends the e4 pawn, but leaves his king more vulnerable to an attack. Hikaru once again moves a pawn, this time to e5. This turns out to be a mistake, because Tani can take a free pawn after a bishop-knight trade. The white knight captures on b5 while the black knight captures on b3. Tani's pawn takes that knight with the following move. Despite the previous mistake, Hikaru makes another one with knight e4. This ultimately puts Tani in a better position with the ability to win a pawn in a few moves. He captures the e4 knight with his own. Hikaru shifts his queen over to h4. The white knight jumps to f2. The black bishop slides to h6. Tani fails to capitalize on Hikaru's previous mistake and is forced to move his queen out of danger. The black rook moves to c8. The opposing rook slides to c1. This error causes Tani to lose his rook. His face shows nothing short of disappointment. Disregarding the blunder, he carries on with the move knight d6. Hikaru shifts his rook all the way to c2. The white knight moves to e4. This prevents the threat of an imminent checkmate. Hikaru continues to apply pressure with bishop c6. Tani advances his pawn to g3. This allows Hikaru to take the opposing queen with a bishop. Tani's pawn takes the other queen. The black bishop moves over to e4. Tani captures it with his knight. The other black bishop slides to e3. The remaining white knight jumps to f6. Hikaru retreats his king to h8. Tani moves his knight back to d5. Hikaru's rook slides back to c1. The white king escapes to e2. Hikaru takes advantage of this by capturing the h1 rook. Tani's king then captures the e3 bishop. The f7 pawn advances to f5. The white knight shifts to c3. Hikaru moves his rook to d8. Tani advances his pawn forward. Hikaru's rook remains active by sliding to h3. The white king escapes again, this time to e2. Hikaru captures the f4 pawn. Tani's king stays mobile by shifting backwards to e1. The black rook continues to torment the opposing king, keeping it on the move. To apply even more pressure, Hikaru slides his other rook into the mix. Tani brings his knight over to c1. The black rook moves to b2. Tani's knight moves again, this time to a3. Hikaru's other rook shifts over to c3. The remaining knight squeezes between the rooks to c2. Hikaru captures it with his c3 rook. At this point, the battle becomes futile, as Tani soon resigns. Hikaru wins their first matchup. However, Tani would go on to have the last laugh. A couple of years later, he would earn the FIDE Master title and defeat Hikaru twice.